I'm Hannah Moore, CFP, a practicing financial planner and educator. I'm on a mission to change the way people think and talk about money. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I am excited to be here in 2023, and I know so many people are looking at their budgets, looking at their money in the context of New Year's resolutions. And so just the other day, I was looking back at my budget for the last year of where did me and my husband, where do we spend money in this past year, and where do we want to spend money going forward? And so it was a really good exercise. I learned a lot of things actually. First of all, is that it took me longer than I thought. I always ask my clients, or oftentimes I ask my clients to go through and give me a listing of how they spent money. And that's a big ask. So know that if you're approaching this or if you've already done this, like that's something to be celebrated because it is a lot of work to get a really accurate picture of where you've spent money. If you're anything like me, there's just a lot of transactions that can happen in a month, and to categorize all those and make sure that they're in a system that works, it's a lot. So if you guys follow along, you guys know that I use Wave apps. It's what I use my business books for. And so I just kind of do that. It's like a Quicken, if you will. But there's lots of different apps that you can do. I definitely recommend one that you pull in from it pulls in all of your bank account information and all of your transactions. So you're not having to go through line by line and add them up on a notepad, anything like that. The software can do that for you. But it took me a couple hours to go through and just make sure everything was categorized correctly and make sure that we had this very clear picture. That was the other thing that I realized is that this is a worthwhile exercise. Even though I know, there's a point when I was doing it, I was like, this is a very tedious work, but it was worthwhile. It gave me a very, very clear picture of where we were spending money, where my husband and I are spending money, and where we want to be spending money going forward. It showed like what's possible. Like what have we done? Like where's, one of the questions I'd love to ask my clients when we look at our budgets is where's money been spent well, right? Like it's so easy to like look at our budgets and say, okay, how do we cut expenses? How do we lower our expenses? How do we get by on less? But I love kind of flipping that narrative of really reflecting and saying, okay, like where is the money that we spent that went to support what's most important to us? I think those are really, really big questions and really important as we're looking at our money and kind of reframing this out. I already mentioned, I know it can be overwhelming looking at this. When I looked at our total spending numbers, it was higher than what I thought it was going to be. I kind of knew that we had some big ticket items that we spent on this year, including house repairs, things like that. But that number still surprised me, and a lot of it is going into places that are important to us, right? Childcare is our number one expense. It just is, right? And I would say our kids are our most important thing. And so we see our money kind of following that. But it can be overwhelming to see kind of the numbers and actually see this, just how big it can be. I had a client I was working with recently, and they kept saying like they kind of resemble my husband and I, where they're mid-30s professionals working with young children, and they're like, how can it be this hard? We're bringing in a good income, and yet it doesn't feel like we're making progress. And one of the things I was reminded of when I was looking at our budget is the seasonality of life, and the seasonality that follows your money follows that as well. When you start out, you graduate high school, graduate college, you're not making as much money. Your life looks different. Your money life looks different. The things the things I consult on with clients in that stage are different than when you're married, you start having kids, your kids get to high school, your kids are going to college. There's different seasonalities of life, including when you get to retirement and all of these phases. And so when I looked at the number for us, where total amount that we were spending for the year, I was like, oh my gosh, because I know as a financial planner, I know how much money is needed in order to support a lifestyle when you're spending that much money. And it took me it was kind of a shocking moment for me. But what I realized is I went back through there and I pulled out our childcare expenses. And I said, okay, so this is going to be our childcare expenses. This is going to be other expenses that are tied to our kids, which is a lot of money in our budget right now. And we're able to look at that and say, okay, that's not going to be forever. We have 3 children under the age of 4 or 4 and under right now, including a 3-month-old baby. There's just going to be a lot of expenses, especially as we're choosing to, both my husband and I, to continue working. And so that's just going to be the phase of life that we're in. And I think what I've realized, and certainly with working with clients, is that you need to be able to give yourself grace for those times. Now, I'm saying all this, And we're very intentional about building good financial habits as we're doing this, right? So we're still saving for retirement. If you're working at a corporate job, you'll often have like your 401k as a retirement option. And so for a lot of my clients, they come in and they're like, we're struggling. We're like, how are we spending this much money? How are we surviving? Like, how are we making progress on this? But they are making progress because they continue to invest in their 401k. They continue to be like doing these little steps automatically that they don't even see. It's like when you're exercising, you're trying to get healthy and you drink water. You're like, I'm just drinking water, but it can make such a difference. And it's really how I feel about, when we're investing and continuing to go into like the 401ks and things like that. You're still building those good financial habits, even though you may be spending more money than you have before. One of the other things is, the good financial habits is actually going through this exercise of recognizing where have we spent money. So my husband and I were able to sit down and look at our spending, and some of our spending in certain categories is going to go down, and some of our spending in other categories is going to go up because of the life because again, the seasonality that we are. For our work, I'm coming off of a maternity leave. So getting back into the workforce, getting back into we're really going to be hitting the ground running. We have, a handful of new clients that are already signed up to join us. We have, we train financial planners. So we have some really big projects that we need to really, go all in on. And so we're looking at, okay, how can we make sure that our money is supporting all the other goals in our life, right? And it's not about like, yes, there are areas that we're going to be cutting, but mostly we're choosing to spend more money in certain areas that are going to enhance our life. And again, this is very counter to this, just put your head down, just work harder, work harder, work harder. Like, yes, we're going to be working really, really hard. And I want to be enjoying the time that I have with my kids. I don't want to be doing the laundry and cleaning the floors instead of spending time with my kids. Now, those are decisions that we're making and are very specific to our lives. But I'm telling you all this so that you can make sure that you have the freedom to be able to make those decisions for yourself as well. And realize that like there is a season for cutting back. I have lived it. I have been there on how do we, cut these expenses back. And then now we're in a season of realizing that it's just expensive. It's expensive to have kids. Before I was telling my husband that we were going to be doing this, and he was like, well, if you want to save money, don't have kids. And again, I do believe you can have kids and, not spend absorbent amounts of money. But again, these are just the decision points that people have in their life. So I say all this to kick off the new year of number one, give yourself grace as you're looking at your spending and your budget. It's one thing to be making New Year's resolutions, but make sure that those New Year's resolutions are aligned with the pace of your life, of what you're going to be doing and what's realistic. And the goal is like, yes, we want to be financially successful, right? Like, yes, that's my whole job, right? Is helping people be financially successful. But oftentimes that financial success can be being intentional and spending more, in areas that are important to you. But it's about making sure that you have the habits and everything built up behind that, right? Make sure that you're looking at your budget on a regular basis. Be sure that you're saving for retirement, that you have the life insurance and the wills and all of those pieces that are so important for that foundation of your finances. Make sure that you have those pieces. Make sure you're doing, good financial fitness, if you will. But it is okay if you're in a season of life where you need to spend more money. It's okay. Again, all within the context of making sure that it fits within your situation. And again, every situation is different. So good luck as you guys go approaching the new year, looking at money and your budgets, hopefully with a lot more grace and a lot more just making sure that your money is aligned with your life. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everyday Money with Hannah Moore. If you like what you heard, subscribe and check out livewealthynow.com. We have a lot more resources to help you live wealthy now.